My name is Tim Eisenhower. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to today's ceremonies, festivities. Today is really a great day for Union County. It's the culmination of years of work by a number of people. It's not just a dedication or a ribbon cutting for a government office or some government program. Today is really an implementation of a new strategy, a new concept for Union County that I think will significantly enhance the lives of domestic violence survivors in Union County. I think it will also save lives. It's something that we in the prosecutor's office and the county, throughout the county, so many people participated. We're just extremely proud of, and I'm so happy to see all you people here because it really makes me believe that you guys share in the same vision as well. If I could ask you all to stand now for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before starting with the program, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to recognize many of our guests and speakers here tonight. Because of the turnout, though, there are just quite a number, so if I could ask you to hold your applause until the end, I think that would be very beneficial in terms of conserving time. First, we have our assignment judge from Union County, Karen M. Cassidy. We have a number of judges with us as well, the presiding judge of family, Judge Lisa Crystal, Judge John Hudak, Judge Alan Lesnowick, and Judge Linden Malozzi, I believe, walked in. There you go. We also have Jim Agro, the trial court administrator for the County of Union, for the Union Vicinage. We're also particularly pleased to welcome our Attorney General, Christopher S. Perino, and the Director of Criminal Justice, Ellie Honig. Also, of course, Prosecutor Park, who has played such a key role in this entire project. We also have from the legislative branch, Senator Ray Lesniak, from the Assembly, John Bramnick, our Union County Sheriff, Joe Cryan, and of course, Mayor Bolwich, who just walked in a moment ago, and I don't know where he's sitting, but there you go, someplace in here. Thank you so much for coming. We have our many members of our freeholder board. Speaking today will be our chairman, Bruce Bergen. We also have Vernell Wright, Betty Jane Kowalski, Mohammed Jallo, Al Mirabella, and Freeholder Carter. Thank you so much for coming. Al Fiala was supposed to be here, but because of an injury to his foot, I do not believe he was able to make it. We have Linda Stender from the Union County Improvement Authority, who graciously gave up space to allow this center to have a home. We have a number of police chiefs from Union County as well. Chief John Brennan from the Elizabeth Police Department, Chief John Roger from the Rahway Police Department. We have the new Hillside Chief, Vincent Ricciardi. Thank you for coming. We have from Plainfield, the captain, Kevin O'Brien. We have Chris Debbie from the Union County Police Department. We have our Public Safety Director, Andy Moran. We also have Jan Lillian, who is well known as the director of the Y, but also is the head of the contracting agency to actually run the FJC. We have our director, Adela Caceres. And I have not seen Frank Guzzo, even though I thought he was going to be here. That is particularly heartbreaking to me because Frank played such a pivotal role, and were it not for his involvement, I don't know if any of us would be here. We do have Karen Dinsmore, who took his place as the acting director of Human Services. Frank served in that position many years and just retired last week. He really did put us in his rear mirror. We lastly have Anne Marie Bramnick, who I don't really know quite how to describe her title. She's an ex-assistant prosecutor who played a key role early on when she was an assistant prosecutor in conspiring with Grace Park and figuring out how to get this thing off the ground. She encouraged Grace at every step of the way when sometimes I was being negative on certain things. She since has left the office, but since leaving the office has continued to volunteer and play a really key role in making sure that the vision that Prosecutor Park and her hatched 4 years ago really came to fruition today. Our speakers today. I really would like to thank them for taking the time to come. They're all have extremely busy schedules, and I think their presence today is once again a testament to just how important this is. Our first speaker will be Judge Cassidy. Her role in this is somewhat unique. There are a lot of freeholders perhaps and county managers and people in government who think that this is the Union County Courthouse. There are others who would suggest that no, this is Judge Cassidy's courthouse. That was made abundantly clear to me when out of the blue, when Grace kind of came up with this idea and we were exploring many options. The first question obviously is, where do you get a home? There was financing, there were all sorts of other issues, but it was like the place needed a home. And for in a development that I still don't completely understand today, there happened to be space on the second floor that was dedicated or designed to be used by the Union County Improvement Authority. Just in the beginning, after some exploratory conversations with Frank Guzzo and a few others, surprisingly, the UCUIA, through Dan Sullivan and Linda Stender, volunteered that space for us. And that was like manna from heaven. This is like wonderful. This is just a great development. But then it was like, but you have to talk to Judge Cassidy because that courthouse, despite who's paid for it, is her courthouse. She values every square inch of that, and she is desperate for space up there. So Tim, Grace, we don't know whether you'll be successful in that, but you have to go to Judge Cassidy to ask for permission to use that space. We went to Judge Cassidy, and surprisingly, despite the fact of the many needs that she had in this courthouse for her personnel, her staff, her judges, she graciously gave up that space. I think that was a decision that many assignment judges would not have made, but I think she recognized the need for the space and the value that would have for the victims of domestic or survivors of domestic violence, and for that we're eternally grateful. Judge Cassidy.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to my courthouse. It's really not my courthouse, but every time I walk in here, I always get excited. But I'm very excited about what is going to now be adjacent to my courthouse, which is the Family Justice Center. When I started as a judge, and all the judges that are, the few that could make it here, that are sitting here today, and you sit in the domestic violence docket, it is a real eye-opener. You know, I had a nice world where I was dealing with civil cases and did not recognize the enormity of the domestic violence situation in this county. You know, you live in these suburban communities and, maybe you hear things now and then, but you really don't get it. And I think one of the things that judges really struggle with that hear that docket are one of the most trying decisions you need to make is when a victim comes in and it's a pretty significant case. And in other words, as any case, they have a span, domestic violence. But this is one that, is pretty significant. And the victim comes in and asks for these restraining orders to be dismissed. And one of the things you do as a judge is you have to make an inquiry to make sure that they know and understand what they're doing. And sometimes you'll hear from these victims, well, I have no place to go. If I don't lift this, I can't go back to my house. I don't have a means to support my family. My spouse is the one who supports us, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it may be. So they have an economic reason to drop it. A variety of things. So when the prosecutor came to me, and there are other counties that have this with the concept of putting this together, there really was no reason I should say no, absolutely not, because what this is designed to do, and I know that this panel is going to get into it in a little bit more detail than I am, is designed to take that excuse to dismiss, hopefully away from individuals who really need that protection and are utilizing other reasons to give up the protection, that hopefully this Justice Center will afford them opportunities not to have to necessarily drop a restraining order. I know the judges that are here hear these cases, and it's an issue we face all the time. So we are very happy to have the Y, the prosecutor's office, and all of these other agencies that are going to be involved within this within this center available to us as a resource. I'm sure we're going to be using this resource pretty frequently. In our DV court, we have 2 judges, and that's all they hear full-time is domestic violence matters. That goes to show you what a significant problem it is in the county. So thank you to all of the entities that made it happen, the freeholders, the Improvement Authority, and the Prosecutor's Office, and all the other people, and the Y. And I know I'm forgetting people, so I'm not doing that intentionally, but it is very necessary, very important, and we're grateful to have it as a means of hopefully doing justice a little bit better in Union County. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker has 40 years of service in the Assembly and the Senate. He has spent virtually his entire career serving the residents of Union County, many of which, and in most instances, were those who needed his help the most. He certainly has a long history of working with legislation that would benefit the victims of domestic violence. Even though, sadly, his tenure will shortly be coming to an end, the work that he has done these many, many decades, I think, will clearly continue to affect, for the better, the residents of Union County for decades to come. Senator?
Thank you, but I just want to let everyone know I'm not going away. I'm going to continue to fight for social justice as long as I have the ability to breathe and to advocate for these causes. And this is one of those great causes. Judge, you were so right, hitting the nail on the head, that this is like a sleeping giant, a hidden crime, a silent crime that so often goes undetected and unreported because the victim doesn't have a facility like this that could provide all the wraparound services that are necessary under those circumstances. And by the way, I am surprised that this isn't named the Chris Bulwich Family Justice Center. I mean, how many things are going to get named after you, Chris? Sorry, man. And also, I want to divert just a tad because this is a great legacy for our departing prosecutor, who's done such a great job, not only getting this off the ground, but in her tenure as our prosecutor, going into the private sector. But I think we're going to grab her back into the public sector as soon as possible. So let's give Grace Park a big hand. Lastly, I just want to thank all the agencies, the freeholders, the sheriff's office, the legislature, the judiciary, because it does take a village to raise a family, and we're part of that village. And as a result of that, facilities like this will make us a better family. Thank you.
Assemblyman Bramnick probably knows more about the Family Justice Center than anyone in this room. Not because of his work in the Assembly, because he too has certainly worked on lots of legislation that has benefited survivors of domestic violence. I think his knowledge, and this doesn't diminish his contributions in other areas, but I think it really is based upon the fact that Anne-Marie Bramnick is his daughter-in-law, and she is absolutely rabid about this subject, and she has talked, when we first started talking about this, when she first started talking to Grace, and candidly, I tried to avoid a lot of those conversations because they were so in-depth, intense, but it's a subject that's near and dear to her heart, and I'm sure that the Assemblyman it has become near and dear to his heart as well. Assemblyman Bramnick, if I can invite you up.
I yield my time to Anne-Marie Bramnick. Where are you? No. Let me say, this is a proud day for a lot of reasons. First, let me be clear. Anne-Marie Bramnick was a driving force, and in my judgment, a successful force in bringing this to Union County. So I want to start by thanking you for your leadership here and your passion. You have both, and everyone's very proud of you, and I'm especially proud. But I'm also proud that the Attorney General of the state of New Jersey has decided today to come to Union County. That also indicates how important the family justice system is to New Jersey. The Attorney General is here, Chris Perino. Thank you very much. And that's not to diminish all of the other elected officials. I look to my left, and that's the jury pool. Okay. I heard it was a Democratic county, but that's ridiculous. That's what happens when you're a trial lawyer. Let me go back to why I'm so proud. We hear so much negative news about government. This is what government is supposed to do and has done. It brought together the private sector. It brought together the judicial branch, the legislative branch, the executive branch for success. And what is that success? Making domestic violence victims enter a system that's holistic, that brings together all the resources so that person does not feel abandoned. And that's what this is about. And I am so proud, finally, and I ask all you people in the media today to put this on the front page. Government work together to make people's lives better. I am very proud. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is someone who Prosecutor Park frequently has turned to for assistance over the last 4.5 years. He's somebody who, when it comes to the arena of domestic violence, has been a true champion. He too served in the Assembly. He sponsored legislation at that time. It's something that he very much cares about. Once he became undersheriff and then sheriff, he continued that work. I'll never forget meeting with Grace and the sheriff in the prosecutor's office, just basically going over the background of his office, their role with domestic violence, with serving and enforcing restraining orders. And it was that conversation where I think I first got a good grasp of just how much Joe Cryan cared about the particular subject. And it was a good thing he cared, because the very next thing the prosecutor did was ask him to assign a person to our domestic violence unit, which he graciously did, and he has continued to do over the years. When one person would not age out, but would spend enough time there to pick up some skills, to then take it back to the department and use that there, and for us to develop good working relationships, we would cycle in a new employee, and he's continued that to his day, even though despite recently we hired one of those people away, which is something you don't typically do in law enforcement, but he graciously accepted because that particular person was particularly dedicated to the cause, and he knew that her working in our office in that unit would be something that would help the citizens of the county. And when it came time to ask yet another favor, we had to go to Joe with the opening of the center and ask for more personnel to provide security for the exterior entrance to that. And as always, the sheriff was more than willing to volunteer his people, his time, and for that we are particularly grateful.
By the way, before I begin, and I'm going to congratulate Grace in a minute, today is Tim Eisenhower's first day in the job as our prosecutor. He was sworn in. Would you join me in a nice round of applause for our new prosecutor? General, like everybody, thank you for being here, but around here we thank the assignment judge first. All right, assignment judge, thank you for being here. And Director, thank you for being here, but I got to tell you, Grace, it's quite a legacy to sit here today on, I guess it's technically your last day. I'm not sure how all that works. But would you give Grace a nice round of applause for her leadership on this? Thank you to everyone for being here. Anne-Marie especially. I think for most people in the room, it's safe to say you're our favorite Bramnick. So we appreciate that. But I wanted to tell you on this day that began at about 10 o'clock this morning, the open arguments were heard in the Matthew Ballister case. And if you don't know who Matthew Ballister is, he's the individual who was charged with the murder, the very gruesome murder of April Wyckoff, who most of us agree is a victim of domestic violence. At about 11:30 this morning in the courtroom after opening arguments, her 911 tape was played. And what you saw or heard, if you had the ability to be in that courtroom or had the time to be in that courtroom today like I did, were the screams of fear and literally someone being murdered as you listened on the phone. We can talk about that later, about who's innocent and who's guilty. But I can tell you, to sit there and watch the tears from the family and the friends of those who loved April Wyckoff, that you understand that victims of domestic violence are not just themselves, but their family, their friends, and their loved ones. Today's been a difficult day for those reasons, and yet it closes with a reason of optimism for the things that bring us together today. I have the privilege of being your sheriff, and I thought I'd share with you just a little bit about the numbers that actually go on that our beloved and incredibly wonderful assignment judge brought forward. This year alone, there have been 3,159 temporary restraining orders issued just through the month of August. Think about that. If you're doing quick math, it's about 395 a month. We've actually served more than 1,600 of those. Of those, 39 were required to search for weapons. Our folks have taken out over 80 weapons out of homes. Now, I want you to think about just for a moment what that's like. Officers come to your door, they're knocked. You are a victim. You have had the courage to go for the restraining order, and it's our job to remove you. The panic that goes through the house, the things that happen to people, and the fear. Put yourself in there, and I hope none of you are those victims. And the things that our officers see are things no one should see any day. And imagine the intimidation of that process for the person who's had to have the courage to get down to Chief Brennan's Elizabeth Police Department and say, I need some help. Think about that for a moment. Today is about those people. And I'd like to put a name in front of you and just see if you remember it. Anna Shalee Cortez. I won't ask you to raise your hand, but from the looks, many of you look like, who's that? What if I told you, hey, do you remember that incident in June on Chestnut Street in Roselle where the guy shot the woman right in broad daylight? Right. Her name was Anna Shalee Cortez. Today we put a name to every victim. Today we put help to every victim. And today, the story of Anna Shalee Cortez, in the post after the horror of the crime came off, there was an NJ.com story about how she refused to assist in pursuing the idea of getting support in a TRO or cooperating with authorities in getting restraining orders. And she ended up in the worst possible circumstance. What I'm most proud of today is not the partnership and the vision of all these people, because it's incredible, it's giving, and it's everything that public life should be about. What I'm most proud of today are the successes we will never see. The victims who are intimidated by this process, who see this great big building and the fear and horror in their future, and with the good people like you, have an opportunity to see past that to a brighter tomorrow. For people who will live through a situation that some people don't. And for people who, with their children, will have a better family and a stronger future. I thank you all today for being here. I have to tell you in particular to all this team that put this together and to all of you who do the work, thank you so very much. We're privileged to be a very small part of it in the Union County Sheriff's Office, but for victims unknown, for voices you'll never hear, I'm certain to say to you a very sincere thank you on behalf of them. Thank you.
Our next speaker, and I don't think anyone will contradict me on this, probably has spent more of her life and has done more for the survivors of domestic violence than anyone in this room. That is the executive director of the YWCA, Jan Lillian. Jan started off as a partner in this program, and now she somehow ended up running it. Jan?
Good afternoon. So in about 2 weeks, Domestic Violence Awareness Month will begin. The month of October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and it's been observed for 22 years. But despite that, domestic violence remains, as you've heard, a local and a national concern, with statistics showing that 1 in every 3 women and potentially 1 in every 7 men will be a victim of domestic violence in their lifetime. Statistically, domestic violence impacts more people than breast cancer, lung cancer, and ovarian cancer combined, and yet we don't talk about it very much. Today, we're starting to talk about it, and today Union County is taking a giant step forward with the opening of our Family Justice Center here. Too often, as you have heard, victims of domestic violence face fragmentation of services. They may start out in court, or they may start out at the police station, but after that, they have to go, if she or he chooses, to a different place for counseling, yet another place for legal services. If support for housing or entitlement is needed, yet another place. And too often, survivors face a tangle of places to go, mixed with the challenges, of course, of getting there, transportation, childcare, necessary time off from work if that person happens to work, and of course, time to do this all safely. So very often, they just don't get there, and they don't get the help they need. In addition, that same victim may have to find her way on her own, advocate, tell her story again and again and again, without a single person to advocate for her. And often she's facing, or he is facing, re-traumatization through telling that story again and again. With the opening today of our Family Justice Center, we're opening a new door to safety and well-being, and we're providing a central place for victims to come and get the help they need. This model is designed to reduce the barriers and the fragmentation of existing services by meeting the needs of victims, bringing government and non-governmental agencies together in one single place, working collaboratively. In fact, the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Violence Against Women, recognizes this model as a best practice in the field of domestic violence intervention and prevention, because that's really what it's about ultimately, is prevention. In our center, people in need will find that they need to share their story only once and their needs only once, and then an advocate will assist them in accessing the services they need, ideally all in one location and ideally all in that same day. Our mission is simple. It's on the fact sheet that's enclosed in your folder, to provide a community-wide approach to delivering services to victims of domestic violence and their families through a coordinated effort among agencies, including county government, law enforcement, domestic violence, social service agencies, and the court, to enhance safety by ensuring that victims receive the maximum protections under the law and that perpetrators are held accountable. Our guiding principles are that we will be comprehensive, safety-focused, victim-centered, culturally responsive, and relationship-based. We're beginning to work together, and we anticipate that we will indeed become a happy and functional family. We at the YWCA are so proud to be the managing partner in this initiative. It's indeed been a long course, but we're so happy to be here. For the YWCA, we have spent, the YWCA Union County has a 97 history of addressing social justice issues. And for nearly 40 years, since 1978, we have been in Union County the provider of comprehensive services to domestic violence. We began in 1978 with the creation of the first and still the only emergency domestic violence shelter, and we've grown throughout the years to provide comprehensive wraparound services stemming from our mission, which is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. This initiative, the Family Justice Center, builds on our strong relationship with Prosecutor Park. And I want to tell you a little bit about how that relationship started. In 2013, we were sitting as a committee and we said it would be wonderful to do a domestic violence symposium and increase awareness in the community. And Prosecutor Park had just started, and we wrote to her and said, would you like to partner with us? And I think within a couple of days you called me, and I picked up the phone and Prosecutor Park said, we'd love to partner with that. And the relationship began. We actually just completed our 4th domestic violence symposium, starting to plan for the 5th now. And it's led to a wonderful partnership that expanded when Prosecutor Park had the vision to begin planning for the Family Justice Center. And of course, you know, so many accolades have been given. Your vision has finally become a reality. We've had over 3 years of planning with many partners, and it's led us to this day. And so I want to start by thanking Grace, Prosecutor Park, and her entire team at the prosecutor's office. Ben has been of great support to all of us, led us through this process. I want to thank the freeholders and the county for their vision, their amazing support for essential services for residents of Union County, and their confidence and support of the YWCA and our programs. I want to thank our partners who are here for being part of this process all along and their commitment to serving the people of Union County. Special thanks to Anne Marie. I saw you. There you are in the front row, who drove this process along, probably drove herself and all of us crazy as we would reach obstacles and then get over them. And thank you all for everything that you did. I also would be remiss if I did not thank my YWCA board and my staff. Many of them are here. In fact, the YWCA staff occupy pretty much most of the right side of this courtroom. They have provided unwavering support in this process, acknowledgement that even though this is something new that came up, we needed to do it. It was the right thing to do. And the staff have been incredibly behind-the-scenes support in making this happen. And they, of course, will be providing the services that are so well needed for people coming to the Family Justice Center. And last but not least, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Adela Caceres, our director of the Family Justice Center. I'd like to ask our four specific FJC staff to stand up: Maria Petak, Claudia Santa Cruz, and Rosa Jaramillo. And many of our partners are here, and so I'd like to introduce them. Partners for Women in Justice. Way in the back. Central Jersey Legal Services. Proceed. And too many to list, but staff from the prosecutor's office and law enforcement who will maintain a presence. So I know there's lots of you here. I can't begin to remember names, so if you would just stand so we can acknowledge your partnership. We're so excited, and we invite you to join with us in providing essential services to people who need it the most. Thank you.
The opening of this event tonight, two people came in who I somehow neglected. We have Hillside Mayor Angela Garrettson. Thank you so much for coming. And freeholder Chris Hudak, thank you as well. The next speaker is someone who I've had the pleasure of knowing since literally I started working in the courthouse as an assistant prosecutor some 30 plus years ago. I've known him in a variety of capacities. I now have the privilege of knowing him as the chairman of the Freeholder Board. Prior to him taking that position, prior to him even running for elected office in any capacity, though, I knew Bruce, I knew what some of his interests were, and his interest in domestic violence, his interest in a lot of issues that really are focused on helping people, primarily women's issues, are something of long-standing with him. It's not something that he developed after he was elected. It was something that he genuinely feels from his heart, and it's something that once he was elected, he's continued to exhibit regularly, and we're particularly grateful he has, because at one point during this process, when our anticipated source of funding for the FJC dried up and we didn't really know how we were going to pull this off, it was Chairman Bergen with the Freeholder Board who really shouldered a much greater financial responsibility than we ever anticipated. I should note that the prior chairman, Mohammed Jallo, was a supporter of this when it was less of a financial burden on the county. Not that he wanted to shoulder the same responsibility that the current chairman did, but when we first started off, the Freeholder Board was incredibly supportive, but then when the dynamics changed, and you know how money has a way of significantly changing dynamics, it really could have been a situation where we had a center, but we did not have anywhere to run it. But Chairman Bergen was just, he was an easy sell. I hate to say that publicly. I know you're a fine custodian of tax dollars, but this was a cause that I think that was near and dear to his heart as it was to the entire board. So Chairman Bergen, I thank you very much for coming today and would like to just make a few words.
Thank you, Tim. I want to welcome you all to our courthouse. And, well, the story of how that got built is another one. I'm very proud to have many of the partners that have come together to make the opening of this Family Justice Center possible here today, including my colleagues on the Freeholder Board. And as has been mentioned, Freeholder Jallo championed this idea when it first came up several years back. And I am going to mention again the names of the freeholders who are here with us today. We have Vice Chairman Granados, freeholders Carter, Kowalski, Mirabella, and Hudak. And I say this on occasion, the fact that you've got freeholder Wright, I apologize. I didn't see you come in. So now we have 8 freeholders here. And I do say this on occasion, the fact that you've got 8 freeholders in one place lets you know how important this is to the Freeholder Board here in Union County. I also want to thank Judge Cassidy for her efforts, the YWCA for taking up the challenge of running the Family Justice Center, the State Attorney General, Christopher Perino, for his support and for being here today. And last but certainly not least, Acting Prosecutor Grace Park and her office, Anne Marie Bramnick, of course, Tim Eisenhower, and the rest of that office, who have really been the driving force behind the creation of the Family Justice Center. It's been mentioned, but I'm going to mention it again. Today is Grace Park's last day on her job here. On behalf of the Freeholder Board, I want to thank Prosecutor Park for her years of meritorious service to the residents of Union County. The opening of the Family Justice Center is an excellent ending to your time in the prosecutor's office, and the opening of the center is certainly a great legacy that you've bestowed upon Union County. I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate Tim Eisenhower, the new acting prosecutor, who mentioned that we've known each other for a couple of years. And it's been a pleasure working with him as in my time on the Freeholder Board, and I look forward to continuing that relationship. The County of Union and the Freeholder Board has an established record of providing critical assistance to victims of domestic violence here in Union County through programs such as the Rape Crisis Center, as well as to children in need through the Prosecutor's Child Advocacy Center. For those of you who have not heard me speak before concerning domestic violence, as Tim told you, this has been a subject of concern to me for many, many years. When I first started as an attorney working for what was then Union County Legal Services, I had the opportunity to be on a statewide committee which drafted the first Domestic Violence Act here in New Jersey. I want to again acknowledge what's now Central Jersey Legal Services for being here today and in supporting the efforts of the Family Justice Center. As a young attorney with legal services, in fact, I had an opportunity to work with the YWCA all those decades ago, and they've continued to be a leader here in our county. With the advent of the Family Justice Center, we've taken a big step forward. We're proud to create an innovative one-stop center to provide a comprehensive response and to place access to victims of domestic violence and their families right here in the courthouse. For a group who are among our most vulnerable citizens, this center will be there for them in their time of need as a one-stop resource. I want to thank all of you for coming today. I want to thank all of our partners, and we look forward to the ribbon cutting and the service that this Family Justice Center will provide to the citizens of Union County for many, many years to come. Thank you.
For anybody standing in the middle, if you didn't note, and you're certainly welcome to stay in this room if you want to be in this room, but there is a video overflow outside if you would prefer. Today is Prosecutor Park's last day in office. That the dedication of the center is today is simply no coincidence. It instead is a reflection of her commitment, her assessment of just how important the center is. I don't think that she was willing to leave her position until today happened, until she actually saw that it was up and running. I would like to have thought that she had a little more faith in me. But honestly, I think that it is what I said before. It's a reflection of the importance of this to her. I've had the opportunity to work for Grace. I've really had the honor and privilege to work for Grace for 4.5 years. What I've seen her do for the citizens of Union County is truly extraordinary. Her integrity, intelligence, judgment, her compassion, her commitment to protect and serve really all the residents of Union County is unrivaled. It is extraordinary, and I will be forever grateful for having the opportunity to just work with you in the capacity that I did. She's done many incredible things, but given the fact that today is about the FGC, I'm not going to talk about those. I will simply say I think that this is the one that she values most. And it's the reason that she's here today, and I think it's the reason that we should all applaud her for the fact that she was the moving force and got this whole thing done.
So today is not about me. It's about the Family Justice Center. It's truly a great day. I started as prosecutor 4 years ago, and about 6 months into my time here, the issue of domestic violence, and I think of it as an issue of life and death, because the issue encompassed victims being murdered by their domestic partners. And that issue was staring us straight into the face, in the face. And within a year, our office had had several horrendous murders, victims in their 30s and 40s, mothers who had tried to do the right thing by filing temporary restraining orders against their batters, but ultimately got trapped into a cycle of violence, which ended in their death. And Sheriff Crine described some of those very well. And many of you know those cases. And ironically, several of those defendants are on trial or about to start trial very soon. 43-year-old April Wyckoff of Cranford in October 2013, Carla Garzone of Elizabeth, the mother of a 2-year-old in February 2014, Anisha Lee Cortez this past June, and the list goes on. And looking at our homicide stats, we have between 20 to 30 homicides in the county per year, and generally about 20% of those stem out of domestic violence. So we started this journey of finding a better way to address domestic violence in Union County. It's complicated because unlike many crimes, it involves two people who are in an intimate relationship, often tied together financially and through children. And as a result, these cases, and we deal with about 3,700 of them in Union County per year, are difficult. Because unlike most criminal prosecutions, victims change their mind about proceeding with the prosecution about 80% of the time. And so we started to look at the problem in a more holistic way. Victims can't proceed with prosecutions because they weren't ready. They didn't have the resources or the mental or spiritual strength to change their situation. They often started the process but didn't finish. So we came upon this model that streamlines and centralizes the resources in the county that really already exists. And in many ways, this is a more efficient delivery of resources more than an expansion. And in the end, it's proven to really help victims of domestic violence. In fact, in San Diego County, where this model started, the stats that the former district attorney there cite to, there's a 95% reduction of domestic violence homicides in 15 years. It's a dramatic decrease. And as a result, in 2003, former President George W. Bush declared the President's Family Justice Center initiative a national model. So this is clearly extremely endorsed nationally. So after identifying the problem and identifying a possible solution to the problem, that was only about 10% of the work. The 90% left was through the collaboration, the hard work, and the commitment of many of the key partners in this very room, that it could actually become a reality in Union County. And as a result, I'm going to go through a couple of those individuals individually, but there's so many that I know I'm going to miss a few. First and foremost, I do want to thank our legislators, because without our legislators, we can't get anything done in Union County. Our Senator Lesniak, Assemblyman Bramnick, Mayor Bulwidge, our Freeholder Board, especially our current chairman, Bruce Bergen, and our former chairman, Mohammed Jallo, who saw this through from the beginning because they were committed to the issue. Thank you very much. Assignment Judge Cassie and the rest of the judiciary, many of whom are present today, and the Office of the Trial Court Administrator, Jim Agro, who all supported this concept from the very beginning and gave us absolutely no trouble, but actual real support. Our Union County Sheriff, Joe Crine, who has been a true partner from the very beginning. 6 months into my job, I spoke to him about this issue, and he planned with us from the very beginning personally, assigning resources to our DV unit and supporting the building of this center. The Union County Improvement Authority Executive Director Dan Sullivan and UCIA Deputy Director Linda Stender, who graciously gave up their space in this building to build this center. I can't forget our County Manager Alfaela, who always supported this and has supported this from the very beginning. And the people on the ground, I can't be remiss to forget Anne-Marie Bramnick, who really, this was her idea. She came to me and said, we have to do this in Union County. And I was the person that supported that idea. But I really give you that credit, having that vision, that passion, and commitment to this issue. Frank Guzzo, who I will later kill because he's not here, because I can't imagine a person more committed to this issue, our former Human Resource Director, who supported us from the very beginning on this issue and made sure things got done. And that's very, very important on projects like this. Our current Human Resource Director, Karen Dinsmore, who will also call Frank Guzzo. Our YWCA Executive Director, Jan Lillian, who's a key partner and who's taken over the really difficult job of managing the center. All of you had the vision, the passion, and on the ground, roll up your shoulders, hard work that made this a reality. So I wanted to also thank our partners. I know Jan went through all the partners, and all of them are here. I very, very much appreciate all your support, your time on the committee where we met all personally every month, planning and hoping that we would get this center together. And I also wanted to thank our local law enforcement partners, in particular our Chief of Elizabeth Police Department, John Brennan, and Director Riley of the Plainfield Police Division, who's also signed MOAs with the center to make sure that we get appropriate response for law enforcement. And I can't forget our Union County Prosecutor's Office, Tim Eisenhower, now acting prosecutor, Mark Spivey, Marie Reynolds, our Director of Victim Services, Karen Weingarten, our Supervisor of DV, and plus Sean Edmonds, who constructed the center and dealt with all our many changes. And before concluding, I want to thank in particular our Attorney General, Chris Perino, and Director Honig for being here today. Director Honig has been the Director of Criminal Justice from my first day as prosecutor and has been an extremely supportive leader from the Attorney General's office. Seeing our office through so much over the past 4 years, I very much appreciate your support. And since being Attorney General about a year ago, General Perino has been especially active in supporting our Union County initiatives. Maybe because he's a Union County resident, maybe not. Attending many of our community events on issues like the response to the opioid epidemic, to the opening of the center. He was here through a particularly difficult and tragic time when one of our local law enforcement officers, Summit Officer Matt Tarantino, died tragically. He's done an amazing job as Attorney General and truly cares about victim-centered initiatives, and I wanted to personally thank him for his personal support of me and of this office since he's taken office. And before I ask him to come up to the podium to share his thoughts, I want to leave you with one thought of my own. I think it's a combination of middle age and the end of my tenure as prosecutor that has made me recently very keenly aware of how quickly time is passing and how short a window one often has to instigate change in your community. It made me think of something that former President Jimmy Carter said. I have one life and one chance to make it count for something. My faith demands that I do whatever I can, wherever I can, whenever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have to try to make a difference. And it's my hope, ladies and gentlemen, that that's what we're doing today, making a difference. So with that, I ask Attorney General to come up.
Thanks to Prosecutor Park. I think most of you know she's going to PSC&G. So we're very proud of her moving over to the private sector. Sorry to see her go. Most of you probably have her cell phone on speed dial. Just remember that when the power goes out next. She seemed very committed to help, and I think we can. No? Look, I don't have to convince anybody in this room that this is the right project being done for all the right reasons. But sitting here listening, I'm convinced that this is what we need to be doing as a state. This is a model that you have created, that you have brought really from nothing to fruition. And that is something that we now need to take and we need to spread and hopefully be able to plant some seeds in a few other counties. So on your last day, while I can still give you assignments, what I would ask you to do is come back to our next county prosecutor meeting where all of the county prosecutors assemble once a month. And Anne Marie, if you would consider coming as well, I'd be grateful. I don't think I can tell you what to do, but maybe through the leader, or I don't know. Probably not. But I would really appreciate if you would come back as well and share your inspiration, your leadership, and some of the nuts and bolts of what it took to build this great program. I'm proud just to be here and be a part of the announcement. You all did this on your own. Really great. Look, I'm gonna. I know it's not about Grace Park, but for a moment, I'd like to make it about Grace Park because, all the politics aside, Grace has done an incredible job. She has been a friend to me from the start, before I knew, in which direction I was supposed to be going. She was there as someone who I knew I could trust. And, there are lots of accomplishments, and I could tick down the list, and I'll hit a few. But I'll tell you that when we were concerned that the train station in Elizabeth was going to blow up, it was Grace Park who I was on the phone with, getting the play-by-play, and who I was able to take some small measure of comfort from in knowing that she, with her steady hand, her smarts, would do everything that she could in that setting to have an outcome which, God was on our side, there's no question about it. But law enforcement acted with incredible skill and coordination on that day and the days that followed. And, we were in a foxhole for those 48 hours or so. And I can tell you, having been there, there's nobody I'd rather be in it with than with Grace Park. And that, to me, is really the most important thing that I can say about her and her character and her ability. But it doesn't stop there. There's an awful lot that Grace has accomplished on behalf of this county. She restructured the way cases were investigated. Big drug busts started happening as a result of the work that Grace did and her vision. When we talk about, community policing, Grace Park was at the forefront. When we look at the 800 body cameras that got rolled out in 16 local jurisdictions, Grace was at the forefront of accomplishing all that. In addition, she's a trailblazer, the first Asian American prosecutor the state's ever seen. You know, extraordinary work. And, you know, all I can say is thank you for your service. I'm so happy that we had an opportunity to get to know each other in the Foxhole and in the Summit Diner. And it's true, I you know, value the work that Union County does. It also shortens my commute by about 60 miles. So I'm always happy to be here. But the truth is, you know, this job, the greatest thing, and Leader Bramnick and I talk about this all the time, the greatest gift that these positions in public service bestow are the introductions they make to wonderful, amazing public servants. And Grace Park is right at the top of that list. So thank you very much. Congratulations on this great accomplishment. I look forward to coming back.
Gentlemen, that concludes the ceremony for today. If I could ask the people to my right and some of the others to remain for the official ribbon cutting and some photos to be held right up here, right now. Thank you so much for coming.